Hello. Good morning to all. I think that we will begin this third plenary session. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation and also to being able to participate in this conference of EGPA that is focused on sustainability. So for me, it's very honored for doing this role. I will begin with a brief presentation and then I will give the floor for our special speakers and the guests. So I will begin with some highlights coming from the international press news. So let me see. Well, as you can see, one is this hot summer is one of the coolest of the rest of our lives. 1 million species at risk of extinction. This is based on a report from the UN, the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. Prevent 3 extinctions or face global ecological catastrophe, scientists warn. And Europe is experiencing its worst drought in at least 500 years. Super rich increased their share of world's income during the COVID pandemic. And that's okay? Thank you very much. World Economic Forum report warns of COVID inequalities fueling social tensions across the globe. So, speaking about World Economic Forum, each year WEF launch a report regarding global risks, and this year WEF identifies that the most severe risks on a global scale over the next 10 years are, in large majority, environmental and social, as you can see, and at the top we have climate action and extreme weather, biodiversity loss, and social cohesion erosion. So to address these risks and also their causes, we need to ensure involvement and cooperation of all stakeholders, public sector, research centers, private sector, and of course also civil society. Which means each one of us and changing behaviors. So what are the challenges that the public administration needs to address and deal with when facing climate change, biodiversity loss, and inequalities? Some of them are the following. The first one regarding the fact that sustainability implies a long-term vision. So, but you know that we all work in our organizations and governments with short-term goals. So we need to deal with these different time scales. Also, this long-term vision needs to be transposed into daily routines, procedures, and processes, of course, within public administration as well. These issues are interdisciplinary, as you all know, and with systemic consequences. So we all, and also public administration, cannot work in silos. For this paradigm shift, we need is essential, a cultural transformation, and to do so, of course, we need new skills and competencies on sustainability. We have a multi-level governance with diverse stakeholders that we need to be coordinated and to ensure cooperation among them, whether they are state or non-state actors. So, to address these challenges, these issues, and others, of course, we have, and I'm really delighted to introduce our speakers here today. We have Humberto Rosa. He is the Director for Biodiversity at DG Environment from the European Commission. Júlia Seixas, Professor at School of Science and Technology, Nova University of Lisbon. Filipe Ferreira, who is invited auxiliary professor at ISCSP, Lisbon University, and Metropolitan Secretary at Lisbon Metropolitan Area, and Catarina Soares, who is an experienced executive and entrepreneur with a demonstrated history of setting up and implementing successful initiatives and organizations. For beginning, we have Humberto Rosa, who will try or will answer the question, why is biodiversity becoming politically relevant? Humberto Rosa previously was director for mainstreaming adaptation and low carbon technology in DG Climate Action. He is experienced in European and international environmental policy, particularly in biodiversity and climate change issues. He served as Secretary of State for the Environment of the Portuguese government from 2005 to 2011, and he holds a PhD in evolutionary biology. Please welcome Humberto, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria João, and thank you, EGPA, for having me. I will try to tell you a bit about, indeed, the political importance of environment overall and within it biodiversity, how it will increase. But for that, I will build on some tales of EU policy making. And to share with you, well, I'm in the European Commission for a bit more than 10 years, that's not that much, but I've seen more than one commission. So in the past commission, the past European Commission, had 10 priorities, within which the word environment was not there. You could find climate, yes, but it was all about jobs, growth, economy, for well understood reasons. There was quite an economic crisis after the financial crisis kicking in. But only 5 years later, a new European Commission comes in, and what's the priority? European Green Deal. So climate, again, is there, but with a revamped ambition. But the main novelty, in my view, is that the rest of the environment, pollution, circular economy, biodiversity, are there with the same rank of importance as climate. So indeed, one needs to ask itself, how come we have come here? And more, let me say more. The Green Deal is not only an environmental strategy, it is explicitly an economic strategy, so betting on going forward in environment and climate to reap the rewards of economic development. And it's also a social strategy, at least to a certain extent, because it has ingrained in it leaving no one behind under just transition. So I think we can claim the European Green Deal is actually the sustainable development strategy of the European Union nowadays, endorsed by the Council, endorsed by the Parliament. But the question for me, yes, and it is a sustainable development strategy with environment and climate at the core. So how come did we move in only some 5 or 6 years from a non-priority, at least the rest of the environment, to the priority? Was it from science? Something new on science? Well, not really, in the sense that natural science tells us for decades that, in a nutshell, human development has done amazing things, but with a cost. And the cost is atmosphere degradation, noticeably climate change, land degradation, and ocean degradation, or in other words, degrading the biosphere. And science also tells us we strictly depend from the biosphere and the services it provides to us. We don't have machines to produce air or water or soil or food. That's all nature derived. So it was not really science. Environmentalists, well, also for some decades they are telling us, sometimes with a bit of doomsaying, but that things are not running well at all. And the influence on politics was not irrelevant, but that cannot really explain. So I have two explanations. And one was referred by Maria João, which is the World Economic Forum is not a set of environmentalists, so it's the big players of the economy. If you follow their global risk assessment year by year, well, climate, environment, biodiversity in particular, climb the ladder of importance. And the last one I've seen was on the top 3, 2 climate, 1 biodiversity. I think now social inequality is creeping in. But you see, that this usually makes some difference for policy making. But the main explanation is public opinion, in the sense that, well, people start feeling the pain or the invoices that nature is sending us since the great acceleration of the 50s that are reaching us now in this century. Of course, climate impacts, I don't need to list them, the floods, the heat waves, the forest fires, the storms. There are also some climate and nature impacts together. Forest fires is a good example. And when I've seen koalas burning in the Australian bushfires, I thought, well, this will become politically relevant because it does raise some emotions to see koalas burning, to give an example. And there are other these invoices that are not climate, but have a biological dimension. One I like is insect decline. People don't like necessarily insects, but they don't like that insects disappear, not fulfilling their role of pollination. Or even plastic in the ocean. Why do people don't like plastic in the ocean? Often because they've seen the turtle with the cotton bud in the ear, or the whale with plastics in the stomach or whatever. So of course, and yes, 1 million species in extinction in some few years, that also made a splash in public opinion. This explains the youth movement to a certain extent, which is climate related, but not only climate. If you see their panels, their diets and nature and bears and whatever else. But also we've seen a lot of elections, local level, regional level, European level, going with a certain green wave. And in my view, this explains a Green Deal kicking in as a political response to this situation. But now, two questions about the Green Deal or about this green wave. One is, but isn't sustainable development about 3 pillars: environment, social, economy? So how come this focus on the environment? Well, there are no 3 pillars of sustainable development. There are 3 layers of sustainable development, which are, yes, the environment, society, and the economy. But if there are layers as in a wedding cake, what's the underlying layer? It's not the economy, not society. It's the biosphere. And I've seen this, the only slide I would like to have is this lovely graph where the sustainable development goals are organized in their interdependencies. And there are 2 sustainable development goals underlying all the others. Life on Earth, SDG 14, life on water, SDG 15, or vice versa. So, yes, now I'm not saying the other layers are not important. They are extremely important. And especially, sustainable development, this is among humans. It's not among angels or robots. And humans, when they feel everyone else is in a party and I'm not, I'd rather spoil the party for everyone. So equality is indeed crucially important. But you cannot have sustainable development without a healthy underlying layer. That's my main message, and the Green Deal rightly recognizes that. The second question is, isn't the Green Deal, let's say, disconjunctural? Won't the next commission scrap it all and start something different? I have 2 tales to tell you again. First tale is the Green Deal and the political priorities of the president said the EU should lead on biodiversity loss as it has led on climate change. And this would imply a very ambitious biodiversity strategy for the EU, because we can only lead by example. And we had it ready for approval around March 2020. Surprise, surprise, a pandemic kicks in. And some voices quickly came in, let's forget about these niceties that we don't really need, like biodiversity. Now it's health a problem. What happened is 2 months delay, and then we got a biodiversity strategy as ambitious as before, or even more, because the recognition between the link of pandemic risks of zoonosis and nature destruction became very evident. Second cautionary tale is one of the deliverables from the biodiversity strategy that was meanwhile approved was we had announced a nature restoration law. So we would come with binding targets to restore ecosystems in the EU. We had it ready with a lot of ambition in March 2022. But surprise, surprise, a war kicked in and all the brouhaha on energy security, food security. So let's forget about Green Deal, farm to fork strategy, and noticeably nature restoration, because now we need production, food productivity. What happened? 2 months delay, and then we have a nature restoration law proposed, present full of ambition, because we have shown that the major risk for food security, guess what, is climate change and biodiversity loss. And again, pollinators is a good example. The nature restoration law was approved together with a regulation on sustainable use of pesticides, because we also need to restore pollinators on which 80% of crops depend worldwide. So I think the message is, yes, there are many crises. Huh? We have seen financial crisis, economic crisis, migration crisis, health crisis, energy crisis, etc., the war, climate change, biodiversity. But these last two ones are structural, and the other ones are conjunctural, or if you want, sometimes even derived from these ones, like migrations that have a climate link. So indeed, I think we only face worldwide one major single crisis, which is the crisis of global unsustainability, and it will only become more and more relevant for politics because the pain is coming, and humans react very well to pain and pleasure. So if I still have a couple of minutes, I would just say the following. The Biodiversity Strategy 2030, which I will not describe, it's some nice 20 pages to read again if you haven't done it, is very ambitious, but it has a fundamental component in it, which is we quantify the targets so as to make them measurable, reportable, and verifiable. And this is crucial to move towards sustainability, to have not only targets we can measure, but also the due governance to ensure that instead of we humans that we like to play with our toys without sharing with the others because our toys are more important, no, you need to share your toys and you need to coordinate, integrate, mainstream, find the win-wins, the synergies instead of the trade-offs to push this all ahead, doing no significant harm to the underlying layer I've referred to. So if I can try to finalize with a bit of messages for public administration. I think the quest for sustainability is and will remain and will become even more politically relevant. Within it, biodiversity, which I've seen been called the next big thing together with climate change, will climb the ladder of importance to the top level because we depend on it. That's getting noticed, and there's emotions which are stronger than for any molecule of CO2. For this will thus become very relevant for public administration because politics will require it. We do need then a public administration which is strong, skilled, with this well in mind, this presence of sustainability, and coordinated in such a manner that the deliverables are coordinated around the three layers, including respecting the last one. So finally, don't count for the green wave to go away anytime soon because the impacts will be coming, as we have seen this summer, the coolest in the next years, and within that, don't forget nature and biodiversity within it is the lubricant of the life services we depend on, and we owe to our children and grandchildren that they can have good opportunities in this planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Humberto. Thank you very much. Now we'll have Júlia Seixas. Júlia has coordinated several technical studies to support climate mitigation public policies, including the technical studies behind the long-term strategy for carbon neutrality of the Portuguese economy by 2050 for the UNFCCC. Currently, Júlia serves as a pro-rector at Nova University for the area of sustainability. Please, Júlia, share your ideas with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria João, and thank you very much to the organization for inviting me. It's my pleasure. Yeah, as Maria João has said, I work in the area of energy transition and climate change for more than 20 years. And in this period, I have been invited for different governments, no matter if it is right-wing or left-wing, to work for studies supporting public policy regarding mitigation. And today, in these 10 minutes, I hope, I will share with you some of my thoughts regarding the role of public administration in this complex area of climate change. And to start, and to make the ground, climate change is about mitigation. And mitigation refers to the actions to reduce emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, in a very long list of activities, in buildings, in mobility, in industry, in the consumer's choice, in the agriculture production models, even in the social aspects regarding just transition. So this refers to the wide range of all the governments, I mean, crossing all the ministries. Regarding adaptation, which means that we have to prepare the things, the way we live, the way we produce to the new climate, this is very connected to local communities, to regional and local premises to prepare everything to this new climate. Again, climate change requires these crossing issues and skills to deal with this complexity. This is just to tell you how wide the scope is of climate change requirements and demandings. What is the role of public administration in this? How it has been tackled? And what I want to share with you is from my experience from these 20 years to connect very close during these studies with the Portuguese public administration. And I can tell you, and I organize here a couple, 4 or 5 challenges that I do see must be reflected and require innovation. One of the things that, one of the aspects that some of them Maria João has already listed over there is the first thing that climate change, everyone working in public administration regarding climate change requires to have a systemic mindset. This means that it is not enough to look deeper in one aspect. You have to understand many things, the multiple relation with everything, and the multiple aspects and sectors that I've already listed before. This is one of the things. Another thing is that climate change is producing knowledge and tools every day. I mean, millions of research results are published every day, and public administration has to be updated about many things. Of course, not about all of them, but about everything, many things. And this requires time and resources to make this updated movement. Another thing is public administration people have skills to work at different scales, because public administration, as far as I know regarding climate change, requires to answer to United Nations global level, to European scale, to the national scale, to the municipal scale. So, and for each of these special scales, there are specific tools and there are different mindsets that you have to connect at the same time sometimes. And then, in terms of these challenges and the nature of the climate change issues and challenges, what is the role of public administration? What have you want to have from them? And this comes the challenges. The first one of them, this is not a priority list, but to start, is the way we have in place, in terms of government, to implement and to design policies regarding adaptation, but mostly mitigation. The challenge task today is how we have the ministries organized. We still have the governments organized in silos. We have a ministry dedicated to housing and buildings is very important, is one of the most important sectors regarding greenhouse gas emissions. And then you have the agriculture ministries, and then you have the economy and the industry ministries, and then you have the social and the social ministry. So you have these organizations from, I don't know, decades ago, and it is very difficult when you when someone is preparing, and I'm talking about own experience, to prepare, for example, the long-term strategy to carbon neutrality to the Portuguese economy for the next 20 years. Because, of course, I'm doing this connected with the Ministry of Environment, but the Ministry of Environment do not remit almost anything. The emitters are the other ministers. Of course, you have tackled this with what we say cross-ministry meetings, but there are meetings that are defined only for that purpose. At least, I mean, at once the policy is published, these meetings does not have the same mandate and the same strength to go ahead with this type of policy. So the first point and the first challenge that requires innovation in public administration, innovation is the way climate change is being tackled across all the ministries. I do not have any answer for you. I do not have research on public administration, but I identified this challenge. Another thing that I'd like to share with you is regards with the need that public administration is demanding every day to be updated about knowledge, tools, and skills regarding climate change. Indeed, it is a very complex stuff, and people that work in public administration, as far as I am aware, are every day immersed in a million of tasks, daily tasks. So they do not have the time to be updated about this new knowledge and new tools. So one thing that I've been defending publicly for a couple of years ago is to develop a new kind of, maybe a new kind of model or to relate and to overcome this challenge. Usually when public administration needs some expertise, as the case, for example, to prepare this long-term strategy, they contract people from universities. It is my case because I'm working at university. But this is not enough. This is for a very specific period of time. You prepare the reports and that's it. And what's going on? I defend that we should think about a new model of relationship between public administration and universities, at least with public universities. After all, we are all civil servants. So, for example, a syndication model where in my role as professor and as a researcher in my university, I should be included there some support that I must do at no extent, at no money at all. I mean, it is part of my job to do that. So I think this could boost, let's say, the way public administration deliver what is supposed to be delivered. So this is another. This is an idea that maybe it could result, for example, to the acceleration of the things that must be done regarding mitigation and adaptation. 5 minutes? Okay. Another challenge that is most related to climate change issues is the connection with society. Public administration, usually, and most of the time, of course, works in a very rigid framework that is the mandate from the ministries and their own list of competences. And most of the time, at least as I am aware, there is no avenue to public administration relating with society. And this is very crucial. For the adaptation, for example, everything relating with adaptation refers to local communities, and even in mitigation. For example, in Portugal, we have these very controversial and very vivid discussions regarding lithium exploration. In one side, we have public policies and public administration defending the lithium exploration, and of course, we know that we need lithium for batteries, and batteries is part of the energy transition. With no batteries, we do not have most of the technologies that we need to go ahead with our economy. But in the other hand, we have local populations completely against lithium exploration. And the formal models that we have in Portugal regarding public consultation that don't work anymore. It's very weak. It's a kind of, something that the law is foreseen in the law, but it does not work at all. So here again, we need some innovation in order to understand how public administration, from the very top to the more operational people, and how can these people relate with local populations? Because I'm pretty sure that if we do not have local population with public policies regarding mitigation and adaptation, we will not have anything solved in climate change. So this is very important. My final challenge refers to a very sensitive problem that I do not know what's going on in other countries, but at least in Portugal I know a bit about it. Everything that I'm saying here requires human resources at the public administration. And regarding this area, and because I'm working in my university, I'm working on the environmental engineering programs. So public administration is very, usually asked me, people, to work with them. And the thing here is how to attract people for the good students and good to go to work in this public administration staff. In Portugal, the salaries are very low. Public administration in Portugal is not able to compete with the private sector, so I'm not out to tell my students that we should go to the public bodies instead to go to the private sector, because the salaries and also because the public recognition. And this is what bothers me a lot, because climate change is recognized, I can say that, it is the most market failure that you have assisted since the Industrial Revolution. The only way to tackle climate change is through very strong public policies. So we need the best in that part of the society and the work, in public administration, from policy design to policy implementation and action. So I really think that we need to raise the social recognition of public administration to work on this stuff, and in order to attract these people, good persons, good students, and of course raise the salaries to be updated with that. So I think what regards to climate change, I do think that public administration, at least in Portugal, needs a very, very serious reflection. Because without a strong public administration, the transition to a carbon neutral and a resilient society and economy that we know it's very urgent will not be achieved. This is my perception from 20 years of relation that I have with these people. So this is about what I decided to share with you. Some of the challenges, maybe we have time to discuss in the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Júlia. Now we have Filipe Ferreira addressing sustainability policies implementation, the case for the territorialization of public policies. Filipe Ferreira has a PhD in public administration and public policies from ISCSP. Its main areas of interest are territorial planning, EU funding, territorial instruments management, socio-economic development, international relations, and public procurement. He was a co-coordinator of the Lisbon Metropolitan Area 2030 Regional Strategy and Lisbon Metropolitan Area Plan to support deprived communities. Currently, he's working in the preparation of 2030 EU funding period and also in the recovery and recuperation program projects. Thank you very much, Filipe. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria João, and thank you, EGPA and ISCSP and INE for the invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, the policy and scientific discussion on sustainable development has gained momentum in the last years, and actions at global level have been implemented so that through an integrated change process, the long-awaited sustainable development is achieved. Right now, the UN 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals calls for societal transformation, where collaboration between actors and across policy sectors and levels in society is key. These goals are described as indivisible, interlinked, and universally applicable, and have an integrated approach with interconnections and cross-cutting elements. Regarding its policy implementation, each national government decides how to incorporate and link the goals with national planning processes, policies, and strategies connected to all sustainability dimensions. Within this policy implementation framework, regional and sub-regional levels are important in operationalizing the SDGs, thus emphasizing the multi-level governance to stimulate and articulate action across the different levels and between different stakeholders. SDG goals emphasize the need for multi-level governance to stimulate these actions. The scientific literature suggests several gaps in the implementation of sustainability policies, namely the complexity to implement an interdisciplinary approach in a very verticalized government and public administration framework, it's the silo approach, and the absolute need of a multi-level articulation that encapsulates a clear and detailed role for stakeholders, especially at the local and regional level. We argue that these gaps could be approached in a systematic way by the territorialization of public policies. Ladies and gentlemen, the centrality and relevance of the territorial dimension in the process of formulation and implementation of sustainability public policies has resulted in the need for a solider analytical framework. We consider this debate to be of paramount importance, and we anchor this proposal in the perspective that this process is central to the increase and sedimentation of the process of scientific knowledge, namely in the context of progressive territorialization of sustainability process, but also to consolidate and to open new perspectives for policymaking. This proposal identifies a set of dimensions that articulate a relational nexus between the nature of the process, the means, and the ends themselves. We believe that this proposal should be understood as a conceptualization effort that can contribute to a holistic view of the process that relate sustainability policies and territory dimension. This conceptualization can serve as a framework for the identification, referencing, and possible articulation of public policies. In this sense, we identify and autonomize 5 analytical dimensions: territorial, strategy framework, actors ecosystem, resources, and governance. These analytical dimensions refer to our holistic understanding of what ideally are dimensions that characterize the concept of territorialization of public policies. Regarding the territory dimension, we consider as relevant and appropriate for this proposal the reference of the Barker report regarding his understanding that there should not be an equivalence between territories and administrative entities, since the territories should be functional areas, not being constrained by the existence of administrative frameworks that did not take into account the increasingly complex nature of social interactions. We also consider that the conceptualization of territory as having a multidimensional nature, which encompasses a set of different appropriations, political, cultural, and social, and makes it possible to operationalize public policies. Regarding the strategic dimension, we consider the absolute relevance of the integration of top-down policy instruments with participation of territorial actors of different scale, thus referencing the territory as an actor. The existence of strategic public policy references, it is a necessary condition for us to be able to speak of territorialization of public policies, as this approach guarantees the existence of a need or an identified problem, as well as the respective strategy to overcome it. In identifying the dimensions of our proposed territorial public policies framework, we refer to the existence of an actor's ecosystem. In this sense, it was our intention to emphasize that this dimension does not only involve the plurality of actors of different typologies, public, private, and social, nor of different territorial scales, supranational, national, regional, municipal, or local, but is also based on the existence of pre-existing territorial dynamics to design and formulation of policies and their respective instruments. These territorial dynamics are based on the existence of collaborative networks, thus becoming the logistical operational vehicle on which local interventions will be based, guaranteeing the existence of a context-sensitive logic of territorial differentiation, as we have already spoken. The empowerment of a dimension related to the logic of resource allocation is mentioned by us to emphasize that the existence of this process must also be based on the cementation of the existing means and resources, financial, human, and technical, to achieve a given objective. In this matter, we highlight the importance of the existence, as far as possible, of course, of a plurality of funding resources that vary according to their origin, supranational, national, or regional, and their nature. Regarding the governance dimension, with the aim of promoting the potential associated with the involvement of the territorial actors and their local ecosystem, they must have an intervening role in the design and the implementation of sustainability policies, thus assuming the need for greater local legitimacy through greater participation of actors in various stages of the process of territorialization of public policies. Ladies and gentlemen, to finalize, the increasingly complex nature of sustainability process and their articulation with the territory as the consequence that formulation of any analytical framework for understanding these realities must be based on a complex and articulated structure of multidimensional interactions. Otherwise, it will not be able to capture the real determinants of the process. The gaps identified reflect the challenges of sustainability policies implementation in a context of complexity and systematic fragmentation and discoordination of policy process. In this sense, the territorialization of public policies mobilized by us enhances the reflection that there is a need of a growing systematization of the analytical framework of the relationship between sustainability public policies and their territorial dimension, and at the same time allow the existence of a policy-making process to respond to one of the biggest challenges of our days, the development of a new paradigm to support the design of public policies at the most appropriate level of territorial governance. This proposal of conceptual operationalization is based on the need to sediment the knowledge of this scientific area that currently presents itself as relevant for the sustainability of policies implementation process, and at the same time can constitute a support to decision-making process when addressing integrated interventions of territorial development, critical to sustainability implementation within contemporary policy making. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Filipe. Now we'll have Catarina Soares, who will address conscious leadership at the age of transformation. Who do we want to be? Catarina Soares holds an economics degree from Nova SBE and an MBA from INSEAD. Catarina Soares is the project development manager for Madocqua Power 2X, an European-scale green hydrogen project in Portugal. Guest lecturer at Nova Business School, founder and board member of Oeiras International School, founder and advisory board member at YES Social Business School and founder of Learning Together, a corporate leadership network for gender balance. Catarina, you can start your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I was listening on the radio over here today that the UNDP report just came out that says 30% of the population of the world is stressed. How many here, show of hands, are dealing with stress? Okay. So he also said that less than 30% of the human population trusts other people. So that's a big problem. I want to bring you today a little bit of a perspective. We've been hearing about global scale, regional scale, local scale, global scale, regional scale, local scale. I want to bring it down to individual scale because we can't really reach anything else if we don't start from ourselves. So what is that? What is a good human life? So we talk about inequality, but what is kind of the aim? I think we talk a lot about what we need to let go, and no one wants to let go anything. But if we think about where do we want to go, who do we want to be, then we realize that we have to let go of some things because otherwise they're pulling us back. They're not allowing us to be all that we can be as humans. And there are lots of different research, but typically a good life is considered a life that is balanced, a life that is simple, a life that has meaning, a life that has personal relationships that are deep and meaningful, that there is some sort of recognition of money, of status, and also that there is some level of achievement so that we feel proud of what we are doing. But we, as humans, are not the greatest at simplifying. We have been evolving and complicating and complicating and complicating, and we are now at a stage of deep crisis. I'm not going to read all the different types of crises. We know that the majority of the world population is really struggling. And if we're not struggling financially because we're cold or because we're hungry, then a lot of us are struggling because we're depressed, we are anxious, we are addicted to video games or alcohol or whatever it is that just makes us completely numb, and we are not really conscious. So I guess one of the things that this stress and desperation is making us insensitive to everything that we need to do. And we cannot address the challenges of our global scale or regional or local if we are not well, and we cannot address them if we are asleep or if we are not conscious, if we are distracted or conditioned. So we need to heal ourselves individually and collectively, and we need to really wake up. So for the level of change that we're talking about, and for the speed that we require, we need to have new dreams collectively. We have to align our new dreams. Some call it purpose. We need to have people, so the human resources that Júlia was talking about, that are mobilized and committed, and we need to act. We need to stop talking and debating and discussing and get to work and do it. And this is at individual scale, it's at global scale, it's at collective scale. You pick your priority scale. But let's talk about the planetary scale for now. So the SDGs are one of these collective dreams that we share, right? It's not going great. The last few years, we're actually going not closer, but further away from where we need to be, right? So this is a quote after COP26, where the Secretary-General said, unfortunately, the collective political will was not enough to overcome some deep contradictions. We are still going across a model where we try to all agree. That does not work. We need to get other ways to get to our goals. So I'll leave this one here because it was one of the topics for me, but just so if we can make it somehow a global dream, let's make it this one, which is, you can see by the chart, it's one of the ways to really increase collective well-being is to reduce income inequality. So the countries that have less income inequality are generally, for everyone, doing better. So we do better collectively without these inequalities. So this is a collective dream that I think we should share. This is probably known to many of you. It came from Sweden recently. I really like it. And it has to do with how, so these are the IDGs, the Inner Development Goals, and these are the personal, that every person really needs to achieve these goals so that we can be of service at a collective level, right? So it's about being present, it's about being cooperative, it's about knowing how to deal with people, and it's about action. This is one tool. There are others. I'm going to talk about two briefly. We don't have a lot of time, that I quite like, and I thought maybe it could be helpful for your work. This one came from Latin America. I was at a conference recently with a small group of people at BMW Foundation, and Leonardo Maldonado Figueroa from Sistema B, he shared this extreme collaboration framework. This is a great tool. You can go online. It's all open source. It's called colaboracionextrema.global, but you can search global extreme collaboration. It's in Portuguese, English, and Spanish, I believe, and it has a lot of steps by step. And what it is really like, instead of us going to a common goal for everyone, when you have so many stakeholders that have different intentions and don't agree, let's pick an epic common purpose. Let's pick that goal that we're going to deal with, and then let's find out some common goals. So some of us will agree on some things sometimes. And that is a starting base for us to work across different stakeholders. This is done a lot at municipality level, but basically the narrative changes from us against them to basically just us, right? And this interconnectedness allows us then to start really making commitments at different levels. And it's very important to include business as one of these stakeholders so that we can then really get to also get the reach of the people and citizens so we can have this large-scale people collaborated to reach our goals. Another one that you probably know as well is also a collective dream is the donut. The donut of social and planetary boundaries is a very exciting tool. And it basically, does everyone know the donut? Just show of hands. Not everyone. Okay, so basically, Kate Raworth is the economist that started this. And what they were saying was, let's stop this nonsense of just focusing on GDP growth as if it's a panacea for everything, one indicator. And I mean, if we talk about infinite growth, think about yourself. If you have an infinite growth, that's not a happy feeling, right? So that's something bad. Infinite growth, especially when we're talking about limited resources, cannot be the panacea, right? So we need a dashboard of different indicators that show us progress. And what they were saying is, what is the minimum that we are willing to accept from a social perspective? So education, gender equality, income equality, what is the minimum, right? Below that, we are not accepting it. And then, how can we reach that without overshooting the planetary boundaries of the ecosystems, without ruining the oceans, without destroying biodiversity, right? So that's the top ceiling. And that gives you kind of this little space where life is regenerative, it's just, and this is where people can thrive. And what I really like about the donut is that it's starting in some cities. It's also open source. You can go to donuteconomics.org or deal.org, Donut Economics Action Lab. And you'll see a lot of cities are using it in Amsterdam, in Berlin, and Cambridge. And I've been trying to go to as many as I can of these, but you can go as well. If you sign up, it's online. And see how they're working. And you can see that they're all collaborative. So it's all based on really sharing. It's all technology supported. So for each of the dimensions, you get the data for that city or for that community, and you see where are we doing with poverty? Where are we doing with health? How are we doing with greenhouse emissions? And then it's volunteer-based, but you have different stakeholders. So in some you have, even in Berlin, you have a political party involved, in others you don't. In Cambridge you have a municipality involved, in others you don't. And so it's still being defined, but it's very much involving everyone. And what I also love is that it has a sense of urgency. It's working right now, but it also doesn't forget about the long-term focus. So it's tailored towards the long-term focus. So what we can't do is be so urgent that we only focus on the right now, right? And so what I also included here as a challenge was that maybe the reason you don't know about the donut yet is because it doesn't have the conditions to go viral, because it's not polarizing, it's not us against them, it's not black against white, it's not right against wrong. And you know, with social media and all of that, we like polarizing to go fast. That polarizing things go viral, and this one doesn't. And also, it's not associated with one person. It's not someone's, I mean, Kate Raworth is the original economist, but she never kind of went to take it on as her thing. And so, but it's a really great tool that I urge you to look at. In all these teams, I was also asking in different cities, what are the skills, what are the things that they're looking for in the teams that work there? And it's typically this, it's more eco than ego, right? It's having an open mind, it's being creative, enthusiastic. It's of course having the technical skills for the different areas that they're gathering data. It's about being able to tell the story of what's happening in their city. It's fantastic to watch in all of them, Cambridge, Amsterdam, Berlin, what has already been achieved. And then they have skills also that they need, graphics design, and of course systems thinking, like was already mentioned here. So we really need to tap into this new knowledge that we've seen from supply chain disruptions, from global pandemics. We all know that we are deeply interconnected. If you are better, I am better. If you are worse, I am worse. Collectively, this interconnectedness is now known to all of us. And so this is a big shift because we're stopping thinking about the world, about a world of things. We're talking about a world of relationships. And this is a huge, huge change, and that's why some call it the age of transformation. And before I go in here, and I also want you to keep that in mind, that it's not so depressing, you know, that we're, you know, it's too hot or it's too unequal. It's actually a time of rupture with what is not allowing us to evolve. It's an exciting time to be alive. It's an exciting time to be a leader in public administration. And what we need is really to have this conscience, this collaboration, and to mobilize people. Very briefly, I just wanted to bring you some notions about conscious leadership. So from conscious capitalism, there are several pillars, and one is conscious leadership. You can't have a healing organization or a healing public administration if you don't have healing leaders. And healing leaders are people that have certain different characteristics. One of them is humility, which is not something that we used to see in the leadership of the past. And the traditional leadership was more about keeping order. It was more about reaching goals, being hierarchical, the leader would tell you what to do, and people would blindly follow. It was about, in companies especially, I work more with companies, there's a focus on the shareholder, there's a focus on the short term, and it was very much what was needed was the kind of skills that we call masculine values. So this is not that they're for men, but what these values we talk about typically like direction, assertiveness, to get us to get things done. And now we're talking about conscious leadership, which is about navigating ambiguity. It's about being present and conscious. It's about collaboration and networking. And the leaders are the people that people follow because they will take them to a better place. It's about empowering and inspiring people that you serve. So also the focus moves from shareholders to stakeholders. And when I mean about involving stakeholders, it's not about what can I get from that stakeholder for me. No, it's also looking about their intentions and really making something that is win-win. And it's, of course, about bringing up the mature masculine values and feminine values like adaptability, creativity, caring, empathy that is present in all of us, but that we have been so shy traditionally in showing in our work and in our leadership roles, and that, of course, has changed. And I just wanted to leave you with this definition that I started looking at before I started working on my presentation. What is that, public administration? And apparently there is a definition, which is, it's a field which leaders serve the communities to advance the common good and effect positive change. So public administration, for me, is the natural environment for conscious leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Catarina, Soares, and thank you all for being synthetic in order to have around 20-25 minutes for the discussion. Now, well, we are open for receiving your questions. I don't know if we have questions from the public, but we are here and available to receive your questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question. No, I have. Otherwise, I have some. Who wants to break the ice? One hand. Another one. Okay. We'll collect maybe 3, and then we'll have a second round. Please identify yourself, and if you want to ask to a specific speaker, please identify.
Thank you very much. My name is Siria Torelli, and I work at European Training Foundation, and I want to, first of all, thank all the speakers, because I found the panel extremely inspiring. I both recognize myself of some of the things said, but I've also learned a lot of new notion and concept. And I can only, as a comment, support everything was said about the public administration and really extremely crucial role in realizing sustainability and turning towards more sustainable societies. My question is what you think, or where do you see the role for also education and training for population at large? Because public administration has a leadership role, has a driving role, and that's only fair enough. But teachers, educators, they are also civil servants. We need public education. We need to strengthen public education, and as specific section of public administration, they have a role also to lead and to create new generation and to form new skills. I don't need to explain this to you because you're teaching me how important it is, but I just want to know if you have a reflection about, you know, public educators, trainers, coaches, facilitators of learning, of people learning as having, you know, a particular role in the picture of Agenda 2030 and sustainable society. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Francesca Manestrossi from the University of Naples, and I am also co-chair of the 12th Permanent Study Group of EGPA. As a group, we are working very much in investigating how public administration, public organization can support the achievement of sustainable development goals. So thank you for your inspiring speech, which really bring a fresh idea to the discussion. As an accounting scholar, I always struggle about how to measure the progress that public administration can have while trying to operate towards the achievement of SDGs. Because the question is not only promoting a new culture, for sure this is the base, and as academic I strongly feel the responsibility to make my students aware of these big challenges. However, as a researcher, I think there is a long way to consider in order to obtain some measures. And I would be really interested in understanding if you can suggest something that are not only the typical indicators that the United Nations have connected with Sustainable Development Goals, but more specifically how to develop indicators that might support specific categories of public sector organization. I mean, local governments, university, public health organization, in moving forward towards a more sustainable society. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more. We have here one at front, and I would believe that we have another.
Thank you. Louis Meuleman, I have a question for Humberto, a former colleague in the European Commission. I spent beautiful years in DG Environment, and what I always observed there was how driven people were on the content, on the substance, on the policies. So they made strategies and policies that were not always implementable because the governance part was considered as boring. Monitoring, indicators, and all the kind of stuff, coordination mechanisms. And I think there's a big difference between the old biodiversity strategy and the new one. The new one is not only more ambitious on policy and on targets, but also on governance. There is more an accountability, a measuring mechanism, and so on. Is that, do you also see that? Have you also seen that? The natural preference of policymakers is often to focus on the policy. And for me, policy and governance are yin and yang. They belong together.
Thank you.
May I just add on that and abuse the privilege of being just seated here. And of course, as ever within the details, failure is usually in implementation.
Yeah, thank you. So for now, we will collect some answers from our speakers. We could start with Humberto because he has a specific question and the other João.
Okay, I'll pick the question also on education and then the question by Luis. On education and training, first, beyond doubt is crucially important, including the recognition side of teachers, which in some societies at least has declined, and it should not. But my advocate's devil's advocate look runs as follows. Humans don't change their attitudes and their practices from facts alone, from knowledge alone, nor from education alone. So the education needs to be there, it's fundamental, the knowledge, the facts, but they need also some emotions to move. So in this sense, for the rhythm of change that we need, we cannot just rely on the results of education and waiting 10, 20 years for new generations. First, because not all really change their behaviors or attitudes from education. Second, it takes too long. That's where regulation by one side can be much quicker, but also economic instruments, because humans, as I said, they react very well to pain and pleasure. We cannot hit those that misbehave, but we can hit their wallet through the right policy. So I think this is fundamental to also have as a priority. Now, the question on governance indicators, it has become crucially important in general. I would say even within the Commission, we have nowadays, European Commission, some internal rules that forces us in that direction. For instance, the decision-making is not done by one DG alone. All need to say yes. In the end, it takes some time, yes, but we go there. And we have this regulatory scrutiny board for better regulation, and they ask us what about indicators, governance, so forth. But in biodiversity, there's a big change, and which explains why it has become so ingrained in the new strategy. And just to spend a couple of minutes on that, it's the international arena also, because we have in the conventional biological diversity, we have had these deals for nature for 10 years, and the one for 2010 said we will halt biodiversity loss by 2010. When we reached 2010, we did not halt biodiversity loss at all. So we did another deal, which is by 2020, we will stop biodiversity loss. And when we got to 2020, things were terribly worse.
And when you would go to a meeting of the Convention on Biological Diversity, each country would say how lovely everything is in my country, so the problem should be in Mars and not on Earth, because there's no measurement, reporting and verification, as we have got in climate with the Paris deal. So we crucially need this year in Montreal, New Deal for Nature, more measurement, reporting and verification, and we need to give the example within the EU. That's what explains also, Luis, why it's such a crucial element in the strategy.
Now I think that I hand over to Júlia and do the same round as the presentations, if you want. So,
okay. Yeah, I would like to comment two questions. The first is the role of education. You referred the population at large or the new generation. So I assume that you are referring to the young people. It comes from 5 years old to the university level, maybe. This is not an easy task. I remember that some years ago, Italy decided something that make compulsory to teach climate change stuff in the public schools, at least in the secondary school or to the young people. This is one way to do that. Indeed, I agree with Humberto, we need very urgent actions, but climate change will be with us for many years. So we have to prepare the new generations because they will be the next wave of professionals at public administration and companies and so on. And this is one of the strategic goal that Nova University has at this moment. Because it is unbelievable that today, for example, a program on civil engineering does not accommodate any education staff or courses regarding sustainability, regarding many aspects of sustainability, because those students, when come to the market, they will be applied what they have learned. The same with mechanical engineering, the same with many other courses, many other programs. So in our perspective, sustainability issues at this moment are being prepared to be introduced at all programs at Nova University, no matter it is on law school or medicine or engineering or whatever. It is very transversal, and there will be a specific outline, syllabus, very basic with the fundamentals, with some concepts and tools that all the engineers or laws or whatever should be take care about it. So this is on the university level that I have this experience. Another question that someone raised is about how to measure towards the achievement of SDGs. This is a very, very critical, and it relates a lot what I think the design of public policy should take care, because many times it depends. I'm aware that the reality is different from different European countries, at least, but here in Portugal we do not have the practice to make this pre-assessment of any policy support or a policy design, a policy proposal. So if you make this very serious stuff, of course, to make a pre-assessment should be done against a plethora or a framework of monitoring of indicators. And that's why we do not, we are so weak, I have to say that in Portugal, to assess this. Of course, we have these conventional indicators like the greenhouse gas inventories and so on, because we have to do that to report at European and international instances, but there is a long way to do regarding this. This is a very crucial point. This monitoring is very, very important indeed. I do not have a specific proposal. I have to, as an example, I can say, and again, regarding to education, for example, we are mapping all the courses at Nova University in 3 categories regarding sustainability. Courses sustainability focused, courses sustainability related and courses with no relation at all with sustainability. Less than 10%, almost 25%, and the rest. So at the university where I work today, at this strategic level, this is one of my challenges to go ahead. And this is a very specific indicator to monitor it.
Thank you, Júlia. Catarina, please.
Just very briefly on education, maybe for the younger, even younger than university, just because I'm actually part of a school. It's not a public school, it's a private school. But we talk about a lot how sustainability can be then, it's not about just teaching the SDGs, right? It's about including it in the curriculum, sure. It's including it in the environment, right? So they actually see that, you know, and it's not just about getting the recycling bins. It's about producing energy from sun. It's about all these other aspects as well. But it's also about teaching children how they can relate in a different way. So very, very basically, I actually got interested into the clean energy. I was very stuck in SDG 5, I still am. But I actually only got into SDG 7 through my son, because when he was 8, the way the school approached SDGs with them when they were 8 years old was, pick the one that grabs your attention the most and tell us why. And he said, I like clean energy because it's a mix of two of my favorite subjects. It's technology and it's nature. And they just start getting it in a different way. And in our school, you know, we teach them how to, we have food security issues, we teach them how to grow food. They have gardening classes every week. We talk about stakeholder engagement. The food that they grow is given to the community so we can make soup for the elderly home. And it's just, they see it every day, this interaction. And so I think that's a positive way that could maybe reach also public schools. Just sharing my experience.
Thank you, Catarina. And now Filipe, please.
Thank you. As Julia, I will try to answer 2 questions. First of all, regarding education. I think public administration must have a leadership role. And this leadership must be based in 2 main dimensions. First of all, a very aggressive framework regarding training of public administration professionals. Of course, in his year, and they are doing an excellent work, but that is not enough, because our public administration still relies in a silo approach, and we only can do as much. And I think this is the second main dimension regarding the education. It is the capacity building roadmaps. I think this is very important because institutions are not in the ether. They are made by people. And I'll give you an example. For the next European Union cycle program, for instance, our regional operation programs, it will be mandatory. For each regional operation program, it will be mandatory to have a capacitation building roadmap. And I think this is very important to pinpoint that, because from here we can streamline this approach to all of public administration. Because with these spillovers, we can really can turn the things around and must put public administration in the center of an innovation regarding education. I think this is very important to stress that we have 2 roads, and they are complementary and they are not exclusive. More aggressive training public administration professionals and capacity building roadmaps. And now regarding the sentence, failure is in the implementation. Of course, it's the name of the game. It's the name of the game. It is very important for us to, how can we go from policy design to policy implementation? How can we address this in an effective and efficient way? I think regarding regional or local level, we must have strategies that are based in territory and must be context sensitive, because one of the main I don't want to call it mistakes, but one of the main approaches regarding policy implementation, it's one-size-fits-all approach. And when we are talking about sustainability and sustainability policies, plural policies, we need an interdisciplinary approach, and of course we must have a territorial approach, a strategic territorial approach to implement that. I think this could be one possible path regarding policy implementation, that we must address and solve the policy gaps that we have talked, and of course your sentence, it's spot on. Failure, it is in implementation.
Filipe, we want to do a second round.
Okay.
Do you want to finish? Do you have? Okay.
That's it.
So let's try to have a second round. I don't
If
know
there are,
you have.
if there are other questions or remarks, we can take them. Otherwise, we will be stepping to the next moment and then going to the General Assembly of the EGPA. We, on behalf of the EGPA and the organization team, we want to thank you, all of yours, for your commitment to come here. Now, I would like to give the floor to our friend Louis Meuleman, who has been acting since the beginning of the conference as our shadow rapporteur, taking lots of hand notes, etc. And I would like to give him the occasion to reflect the richness of this conference from his very wise and acéré point of view. Louis, the floor is yours.
Thank you. After this introduction, I have no words.
Thank you.
Yeah. A few short reflections. First, thanks for being able to be here as a practitioner more than... I'm a pracademic, so it's partly academic and mostly a practitioner. And my research topics have always been not governance only, but the governance of governance, or meta-governance. I think the plenary sessions, the three of them, and especially the one today, have helped creating a sense of urgency. And the sense of urgency, it was a very pleasant conference. Should I closer? Yeah, it was a very pleasant conference with a very good atmosphere. But we've seen today again, we are dealing with quite urgent, huge problems, and that is important to reflect that also in research. I think one of the observations for me is I think that we need to realign public administration research a little bit more with the big challenges of now, and more research could be devoted to that. I've been looking at the plenary discussions through the lens of the 11 principles of effective governance for sustainable development made by UNCEPA. And they are about effectiveness, accountability, and inclusiveness. I missed accountability a little bit in the discussions as an important issue. Inclusiveness was very strong yesterday on lifelong learning, that part. And I think on the first day, effectiveness and good governance in general, effective governance was central. I would like to, in the good French tradition, to have three recommendations. The first is about alignment. Public administration principles should be more aligned with the poly crisis we have now, and also with cultural diversity in the different countries where we have to apply public administration concepts. What I sense, and I'm working as advisor for several countries and also for the European Commission at the moment, and I sense in what I see in reports on the current state and developments and modernization of public administration in many EU countries is that new public management, surprise, surprise, is still alive and kicking and is guiding a lot of things, a lot of modernization, so-called modernization. And that's not so great because although new public management has brought a lot of good things, it has also brought a lot of unsustainability. And look, we need economists like Mariana Mazzucati to help us understand how new public management has undermined the quality and the power of public administration in the past decades. So alignment of public administration principles with the situation of now is the first thing. The second recommendation is about balance, and I mentioned it early. that we need a good balance between policy and governance. And I think public administration specialists as you know that, but you have to help policymakers and politicians to understand that there is no effective policy without an effective governance. The third is capacity, mindsets, training. It was discussed many times. I think, and together these three topics, alignment, balance, and capacity are, you could say, this the ABC of what's needed. And this means more research on the burning questions of now and tomorrow, not only about what we can learn from the past, but about what we have now and tomorrow. And I would like to see more research on indicators, measurement, accountability also, coordination mechanism, foresight, meta-governance structures and mechanisms, all these things that are necessary for the questions from now and of tomorrow. That's my first reflection a bit, and I will give a bit more in the reports to come, and I would thank you for the opportunity. That's it for now. Thanks.